You're listening to the Play Space Podcast with Dr. Gregory Bell and Marc Clark.
Ching, ching, ching goes the money tree. And every time it chings, money comes to me. It all flows in so abundantly.
Come on.
Top, left, right, and up underneath.
Welcome to Play Space.
Wave on the money wave.
Doc, I like this song because it's talking about the positive money coming into our life.
Absolutely. I think that's about where we are, because it's about the more we help others, the more we help ourselves.
All right. Ching, ching, ching. Let's get it.
Ching, ching, ching goes the money tree.
And welcome to Play Space. Once again, it's another exciting edition. I'm Marc Clark. That is the Dr. Gregory E. Bell in the building, ladies and gentlemen.
In the house.
Dr. Bell, you looking mighty sharp, brother. You looking mighty sharp. But that's a part of who you are. You have always been that dude. You know, well-dressed, you know, got the little swagger. He walked like a ball player.
You're kind, man. You're kind. You're so kind.
No, we talked about that, Doc, because I asked you that. I said, look, man, every time I see Doc out, the last time that just stands out was at Sean Yancey's event she has every year, a girls' night out.
I remember that one.
Killing him. Doc was killing him with the pink blazer and the pink shoes. And I said, in that white hair, I said, Doc, so Doc, let me ask you this. I said, first of all, I know you've been this guy your whole life. Was it a decision? Doc said, man, my whole family clean.
Yeah, absolutely. Mark, that was a nice piece, man. That was a great event, actually. I remember that was held at American University.
Yeah, sure.
And Sean actually packed the house, and it's a great occasion. I know it was there with you and your wife, and actually Wisdom Martin was there that night, and Tony Perkins, and just some great people that night in the house.
Everybody was there.
Yes. And
so with Play Space, Doc, you know, we're just starting out, you know, first couple episodes, kind of letting people know who we are. And so let's do it again. So who are we? I'll go first this time, Doc. I am Marc Clark. And I'm a 30-year plus media guy, mainly in radio. I've been married for over 20 years to Washington, D.C. news anchor Allison Seymour. We got 3 lovely kids, 2 lovely dogs. I consider myself, I'm most proud of just being a dad, being a parent, and being a husband. At the end of the day, when it's all said and done, Doc, I wanted to say he tried to make the world a better place with a smile.
Yeah,
that's who I am, Doc. Who are you, Doc?
Well, Doc, actually, I'm just one of those guys that just try to be one who's encouraging others to be the best that they can be, because that's the story of my life. You know, at 64 years old now, Mark, I've lived pretty much a life of having to overcome obstacles. I mean, you know, the greatest challenge that I ever had was trying to make sure that my sight impairment, right? I never had a vision impairment because I always knew that I wanted to be a doctor. But I know that they diagnosed me with a sight impairment back in 1964 when I was 8 years old. And I just wanted to be the best that I could be, with the greatest encouragement coming from my parents and my siblings. And now I'm passing that seed on to my 2 daughters and my grandson. I just know that your sight has nothing to do with your vision. And so the mantra, focus on your vision and not your sight. Many of you know me as an athlete and as a scholar, but also I do like to make sure that I come out with the fashions. I think about my days as a fashionable gent at Calvin Coolidge High School. And then when we had fashionettes, I love putting on clothes. I love to feel good. I love to look good, and I love to smell good. But most of all, for you, I want to make sure that I make you feel good, because it's not how much that I know that I want you to remember me by. I want you to know that I really cared.
Go ahead, Doc. Wait a minute. Let me give you a little something there, Doc. Doc, wait a minute. Hold up. The Fashionable Gents. Please tell me that was the name of a club. And who came up with that? The Fashionable Gents, ladies and gentlemen.
Absolutely, Mark. That's Calvin Coolidge High School. Hello, Coolidge. We hot. Can't be stopped. The Fashionable Gents was actually, when we think about the reading, writing, and arithmetic, it really was started by a guy named Art Riddle. Mr. Riddle, who was our science teacher and chemistry teacher, but he also knew about etiquette. And see, Mark, you know, as an African-American male, it really is not about what we do as an academician in terms of a student, but it's how well do we respect each other. You remember the girlfriend that I never had, RESPECT, respect. And so we were gentlemen. See, when you were an officer in the fashionable gents, Mr. Riddle would have us once a week. If you're an officer, you had a green shirt and a white tie. If you were a member, you had a red shirt with a black tie. And then the young ladies had to wear the colors that would correspond accordingly. But we really were a social club while we were dealing with academics, trying to get to college and careers, but trying to have some fun. Hey, by the way, we were into our play space, Mark. We were playing in our space. And I knew that as an athlete, legally blind at 8, I know I played quarterback and I played safety. I played pitcher. I played point guard. I ran cross country. And I also know in college I played point guard, at least for my first semester, until I played in the wrong space too much. I went from advanced placement to academic probation. That's right. That story is one that went from a 3.8 in high school to a 1.1 first semester. I pluralized P-A-R-T-Y, Mark. It went from P-A-R-T-I-E-S. Hey, you know what I'm talking about. That is party, but I had to prioritize and refocus. So in 27 years later, as I begin to think about from 1956 to 1984, I was 27 years old when I finished that PhD at Ohio State University. Never used a typewriter in my life. Don't know how to turn on a computer, but I know how to ask for help. But I know how to write with big print.
Wait a minute, Doc. The only thing you got wrong was you didn't hit him with the Ohio State University.
Thank you for that correction, because the must be the real deal in Columbus, Ohio on High Street. Thank you for that update and that correction, my brother.
And so, Doc, like you said, you basically told people, even today, Allison was like, now play space, what does that mean? I said, you got to have Doc break it down. People say, well, what does play space mean? Y'all's two grown men talking about play space. What does it mean? Well, Doc.
Here it is. Whoop, there it is for my sister Allison and for you. Here's the deal. Hidden in each adult is a child who wants to play. And so as I think about how I became Dr. Bell, it really was a major in early and middle childhood education. But I had a major in an area as well called African American Studies, community involvement from the University of Maryland, Baltimore County. And as I began to think about that experience, I had an opportunity to play for the first African-American ball player at the University of Maryland, Coach Billy Jones. And I had an opportunity to play with a guy who was still my friend today, Jay Moore. And Mark, you had a chance to talk to Jay. Jay is down in Atlanta. But when I think about the opportunity, I had an opportunity to play athletics, but the play was really about you had to do academic excellence in order for you to be able to be eligible. So the space really is, when you think about play, if we are two adults who want to play. Yes. You know what? I think that people like the most about Mark Clark is your sense of humor, man. You make people feel great. It's not just about having to be a great learner, which you are in the field of radio and communication and journalism, but it's your play on words and it's your sense of humor. It's the way you make people laugh, Mark. And so when you think about it, what about play space? So play is something that children want to do when they play in a sandbox. And it's also what we want to do as we're dealing with this pandemic. Because if you don't, in your own space, have time to SPACE is an acronym that I created, which is in teaching the course at Ohio State called the Educational Value of Play with Dr. Charles Wolfgang. And he used to have me as a graduate student, but I had to teach 4 classes myself. And he said, well, I want you to teach the educational value of play. And one of the things that I said that in a child, they have to have the opportunity to have the S, solitary play. And as an adult, you also play that card game, Mark, that sometimes if you don't have anybody around, you play the game solitude. You play solitary. You play by yourself. Sometimes you have to learn how to be with yourself to be in your own space. But that P is parallel. We can be in the same space, Mark. You and Alex can be in the same space. You can be in your family room. And you can be playing, but you don't interact with each other. You could be doing your play. She could be doing her play. But in parallel, that means that no language is taking place. The A is associative play. And that is with some limited language that comes into play with your interaction. And then the cooperative play is like that social dramatic play. That's when you say, hey, Alice, check this out. You may have an ink pen in your hand and say, Allison, check this out. This is my private plane. And you may do something like this in the air like this. And you say, whoa, she said, I ain't gonna get on that plane. Ain't enough space on there. We got to have that social distancing, Mark. Ain't enough space in that joint. And then the eclectic play, the E in the acronym SPACE, is when it's eclectic and it all comes together. So we're going to play with the space in your mind, your time, and your dime.
Boy, you better go ahead, Dr. Bell. That boy can put some words together now. Dr. Bell, man, I love it. So look, you know what? We're going to make $1 billion with these acronyms. When I say we, Doc, I'm saying because you're my brother. It's you get the bigger cut, but I'm just saying.
There's no I in the word team, bro. Once you go ahead and take your cut, give me the leftovers. Because as long as we help one person, it is the HOPE. If we can help one person every day, play space is the way to go.
I love it. Space, SPACE. So, yes, Doc,
sir.
Let's go ahead and hop into, you mentioned COVID. This thing here, I was just telling somebody today, I don't even remember when it wasn't a COVID world, but the part that's kind of frustrating is it feels like it's going to be a while. So, Doc, number one, we can go many places on this one. You got the vaccine is out, but the story is we are really way behind. Number one. Number two, I think what's softening is there were a lot of people, including myself, who were I was concerned about taking a vaccine because of the history, African Americans and vaccines. I was very concerned, but as somebody with pre-existing conditions, I think now I'm at the place where I'm like, you know what, I'm probably on it. And then, Doc, we'll get into the back to school push. It seems to be happening. So, number one, COVID and the vaccine, Doc. What's your take on all this?
Well, I think, first of all, Mark, I want to make sure that we understand that we do have to deal with the three factors of communication, time, and trust. So if we begin to think about the pandemic and COVID-19, I think we really have to think about the number one challenge in our life is how well we communicate. We want to make sure that we communicate a message that is clear, concise, and that we have a commitment to. So if we think about COVID, we think about the pandemic, we really have to think about having the message come across very clear. Because while I'm not an MD, I'm a PhD, what I do is that PhD is about praising him daily. So you have to make sure that we focus in on the communication of your faith leader. And for you, I don't know who your faith leader is when we think about what that really means, but I know that the faith leader that I serve says that he is going to take care of us. And the way he takes care of us is based on the knowledge, understanding, and wisdom. When given the right information, we are common sense approach people. By the way, that's what play space is. We're really about the common sense approach. We're not going to be using the big words. We're going to break it down so that we understand that simplicity outweighs complexity all day long. So we're going to keep it as simple as possible. So that communication is important. And then having to deal with the sense of time. How long have we been dealing with this? There's some people who are still working virtually, and you may be doing that at home. As you begin to think about it, it's a new way of operating. While some people are now back working, some are back at school, depending on the location in which you are receiving this message. But the important thing is that timing is everything. But timing is really about an opportunity that gives us a preparation so that we can succeed. And in order to do that, then I think that as we think about where we are with this pandemic, we look at the communication, we look at the timing. It is so important for us to begin to look at that TRUST. And in the word trust is us. Mark, I trust you like a brother. And I know that what you communicate in terms of your positive energy and the love that you have is that the timing is important. And so when we think about Play Space, we are a lifestyle platform.
Yep.
And so therefore, as our podcast, we have to know that what Dr. Eric Erickson talks about in the psychosocial development stages of life, which is really about how well we socially and emotionally feel about ourselves, comes from the messages that we receive. And we think about the messages that we were receiving. We were not always getting the messages from the political arena that we should have been getting, that we have received from the medical community. And then in order for us to do that combination, it really is about our society in terms of our social, our political, our educational, our economical, and cultural influences that gives us all the lessons that we need in order to get through this pandemic. And I do believe that we're now going in the right direction, because in order to be successful, sometime when you're going on that road of success, we get off track. And I know I have, but when you get the right information and you can apply it, we're on the right track for this pandemic.
And so, Doc, you basically are, one of your expertise is with the kids. And so tell us, I think parents, we're caught in a conundrum. I can't believe I said that word, Doc. But
Great word.
Conundrum.
Yeah.
But give us the just perspective from a standpoint. Let's not even get into the politics. But when kids, the plus of kids being at home virtually with the family and that support, but then also I know there is an effect when the kids are learning and they're away from their peers, because I guess that part of being with your peers is a part of learning. So, Doc, on the technical spot, break that down for us, just so we know, for those of us who has parents or uncles and aunts who care about the kids, because we want to know what's going on with them.
Absolutely. I say, so when we think about that, parents, we really think about three things that we really focus in on. What is it your child needs? What are the expectations that you have and that your child has for learning? And what is it that they want? The one thing that we want to do is that as parents, I know that for me, with my two daughters and with my grandson, what I want them to do is to have three things in mind. I want them to be able to be happy. I want them to be successful. And most of all, I want them to be encouraged. I want them to be encouraged to the point that learning should be fun. And whether you are learning from home or whether you're learning in school, see, the reality of education is just because students are in school doesn't mean that engagement is taking place for them to be empowered to feel good about the learning process. So for some students, the virtual learning is working. For others, it's not. But at any point in time, the six things that I know has to take place in terms of learning is that we learn by doing. Your child learns by observing. Your child learns by listening. Your child learns by laughing. Your child learns by assessing. And your child learns by reflecting. So that same sense of theory into practice is very simply said that's the dollar. DOLLAR. Take that dollar, Mark, because what happens is people are now hollering and saying, well, children need to get back into school. Well, we got to do it as long as they wear their masks, 6 feet apart, and wash their hands. Now, therein lies the challenge. When you bring people and children back into the environment, remember that they have to have 4 human developmental food groups that need to be fed, Mark. They need to be socially fed. They need to be physically fed. They need to be emotionally fed. And they need to be cognitively fed. And that is important for all learners. So I always say to parents, draw a square. And if you begin to think about the S, the P, the E, and the C on that square, with all sides being equal, the S is about the social interaction that your child needs, whether they're in school or at home. The physical is about that gross motor. They need to get that exercise, and they need to be able to use their computers, or they need the long hand. They need to get that physical movement in. And the E is about the emotional development, how they feel about where they are, the confidence, their self-esteem. And I think the C then is about cognitive. That's COGNITIVE, which Piaget talks about the intellectual development, their problem solving, their reasoning. And that also has something to do with that sense of grading. But I would say out of the 4 food groups, social, physical, emotional, and cognitive, the one you want to circle the most is emotional, because on my chest is about emotional development, because my sight impairment did not provide me any blockage with my vision. So my sight challenge didn't stop my vision, which is to do the best I could, to learn as best I could with what I had. And that's what we are dealing with the COVID, is that we have to place them in environments, whether it's at home or school, that is giving them the best opportunity for them to have the best social, emotional learning so that they can grow to be the best that they can be.
Okay, so I see already, Doc, we need to have some pens and paper. When you start going, this is some good stuff. We need to, in Play Space, we might have to have the Play Space kit where people can get their pens and paper, because these things, man, SPEC, I wrote that down, TRUST. So we need to have the Play Space pen pack.
Absolutely. I think that we don't do it. And by the way, when we say what we need to have, we got a great intern.
Man, Zoe's in the building. Wait a minute.
Woo! Zoe Lucas is off the hook. She's an American University senior,
yes,
who is really interested in that whole sense of podcasting.
Yes.
And you're talking about somebody who got it going on. Here's what I'm going to say. In order for you to be successful, we need to have people in our lives, places that we can go to, and resources, material resources that we can use. And I can tell you, I've learned so much about podcasting with Zoe that, Mark, she is what we say, whoops, off the hook, upside the head.
Okay, so Doc, I wanted to, we're going to, coming up, the Super Bowl is coming up.
Yeah.
So we're going to wait, and because, I got to talk to you about Tom Brady and that whole GOAT conversation, but the impact of leadership.
Yes, sir.
I got to talk to you about Mahomes, my Mahomie, who's a young gun who seems to have all the talent in the world.
Absolutely.
Also, I want to talk to you about not just focusing on sports, but also I want to talk to you about on our next podcast. I'm curious to get your take on a Harden, who basically he kind of did what he wanted to do, which is kind of frowned on, it seems, these days. And he's now with our homeboy Garnett, and he's in a situation. But I'm curious to get your take on that. When somebody they go where they want to go. They kind of play by their own rules and don't seem to care what anybody thinks. But that'll be on the next podcast.
Sure.
Doc, anything, as we wrap up, anything you need to spit out there, anything you need, any reminders? Oh, I forgot, Doc. We got to remind them of the websites. Our podcast, we got a new podcast every Monday and Wednesday. Check out our website. My website is reinventingmarkclark.com. And Doc, your website?
Is pursueexcellent.com. PURSUEEXCELLENT.com. And that Pursue Excellent is because Dr. 100% is my speaking name, and 99.5 won't do.
And don't forget, of course, you can book us to, especially now with the virtual thing, you can book us all over the world to come and speak. Doc is a high-level, world-class speaker. And guess what? I'm going to come along just for support. No.
Mark, come on. You're on the team, Doc. Hey, come on. You're on the team. Hey, Mark, you had asked something about the Super Bowl. Am I right?
Well, yeah, but we're going to wait, Doc, for the next week.
Okay.
We're going to wait for next week because I know, that's a whole show in itself.
Yes, sir. I would just want to say that despite my sight impairment, at 12 years old in 1968, we were the champions, Lamar Riggs Boys Club, the coach Twyman. Shout out to my teammates, because I had a chance to play quarterback then, and I played without my glasses, and we went 9-1. And I got to be honest with you, the only thing I couldn't see was the scoreboard, but my teammates never knew. See, my sight challenge was something I kept to myself because I had to memorize the eye chart so I could pass the physical. And from that, as I think about people like Boyd Rutherford, the lieutenant governor who played third baseman, the lieutenant governor in the state of Maryland, working with Larry Hogan, our governor, who was my classmate. When I think about that, I didn't share that because, Mark, I didn't share about my sight impairment, my legal blindness, because then I would have been ineligible because I wouldn't have passed the physical. What I did is I memorized the eye chart. So when the doctor came in, I could then do that. And because my destiny was to try to get a scholarship so I could get the college experience. And yes, I played 10 years. I played school for 10 years of college. That's right. I played it because I had fun. College was not at University of Maryland, Baltimore County, at Howard University, HU, and The Ohio State University. In 10 years, to be 27 to get a PhD and couldn't see the scoreboard, couldn't see the chalkboard, couldn't use a computer. What I had to use is the gift that God has given us. We all have gifts. You have gifts. And part of the play space is to help you to use in your quality of life the best that you have so you can help someone else.
You go ahead, Doc, and we got to get into that. How you do it, how do you stay motivated, how you overcome obstacles. It's play space, baby. It's what we do.
And every time it changes,
and we're trying to get don't forget now, the ching, ching, ching.
Left, right, and underneath. Wave.
We'll see you next time on Play Space.
Flow money made.
Dr. G.
See
Bell.
you. Love you, Mark. Love you, brother.
Let's go.
Ching, ching, ching goes the money tree.